Hey everybody, this is Justin Dade,
This is Elijah Freeman,
and we're here with Students of the Game podcast this week. This will be our first podcast. We're starting a little late in the season, but we are here to talk about the NFL and the week in review with Week 5.
Week 5 starting this season off, or starting our show off rather, a couple weeks into the season, and we are starting off hopefully on a high note, but there are several teams in the NFL, Justin, let's get right on into it, that are starting the season on a high note. Undefeated teams in the NFL, there are 6 of them, and that seems awfully strange to me, 5 weeks into the season to still have that many perfect teams.
It seems very high. We see a lot of familiar teams up there like the Patriots and the Packers and the Broncos, but we got some teams like the Bengals, Falcons, and Panthers who we didn't really expect to see. Which team has been the most surprising for you so far?
The most surprising undefeated team is probably your Falcons. Just to establish things here, Justin is a huge Falcons fan. That is his team.
We might as well get that out of the way.
He will be a homer for that team this entire length of this podcast. I will be the homer for the Packers, who we can maybe discuss later. But I'm honestly not surprised that the Packers are 5-0.
I don't think anybody's
with
surprised.
The best QB in the league in Aaron Rodgers and a defense that's playing much better than expected. But to get to the heart of your question, I would have to say that the Falcons, just because this team showed really not a whole lot last year, had the whole coaching change, turnover. Their defense is, I can't name most of the guys on it. You can, obviously, for fandom reasons. But and they keep winning games that are really close. They were right down to the wire against the Redskins. Probably easily could have lost that game if they didn't come with a last-minute drive to force overtime. Or actually to take the lead, and then the Redskins forced overtime, and then in overtime, yes. Robert Alford?
Yeah, Alford with 2 picks in that game. The biggest change for the Falcons starts with Dan Quinn and how the mentality he's brought to this football team for a team that was been told that they've been soft for the last few years, and they've really emphasized getting better in the trenches on offensive line and defensive line. The Falcons currently are number 1 in the league in run defense.
Number one in the
league in run defense. And that's not just because we've been blowing teams out. Like you said, we've been in close games just about every contest we've had other than the blowout we had 2 weeks ago.
Right, the blowout against the Houston Texans. It also helps when you have Julio Jones with his 43 catches for 545 yards and 4 scores. That is second in the league yardage-wise. But what's amazing to me is if you look at Matt Ryan's statistics, let me pull them up here just a second. 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and that's a 5-0 team.
And that starts with just how well the offensive line is played. Kyle Shanahan, with this zone blocking scheme that he has been running. I mean, we're running some guys that we expected to struggle on the offensive line with Mike Person, guys you've never heard of, Mike Person, Ryan Schrader, guys like that.
And I have no idea who any of those guys are.
Right, and he's made this offensive line work together as a unit, and Devontae Freeman has just been phenomenal the last 3 weeks. And I can't tell you the last time the Falcons had a running back produce like that, and that's why Matt Ryan's not throwing the ball as much. I mean, he's had a couple bad throws, but he has a couple bad throws, and it seems like he has them every game, and it's frustrating. But the running game has really been the key. Stopping the run and running has been the key for the Falcons so far this year.
That's some old-fashioned football, even in today's pass-happy NFL. Stop the run and run the ball. Devontae Freeman. After a back-to-back 3-touchdown games, he only scored once. Only once.
Yeah, only once.
And had his 27 carries for 153 yards and that touchdown against the Falcons. The dude is averaging 4.4 yards a carry. He has those 8 touchdowns, which is far and away the league lead in rushing touchdowns.
Lead by far, yes.
Scored the touchdown. Is that correct? Did he score the touchdown to put them up?
To take the lead, yes. After he caught a slant that was in the end zone and they ruled it incomplete, so back-to-back plays they gave him, and he found the end zone. So
very, very impressive. So that's one of your undefeated teams. I mean, the Panthers also, to me, are to some extent surprising, but the defense being as good as it is, even in the absence of
But they didn't have Luke Kuechly. Right, they didn't have Kuechly for those games. He's coming back next week. Correct.
That will be huge for them. But to pair him with Thomas Davis is one of the most dynamic linebacker duos in the NFL. And Josh Norman tied for the league lead with his 4 picks in just 4 games.
Let me start the trend right now. If you don't know who Josh Norman is, you need to know. I mean, the last couple of years when Julio Jones and the Falcons have played the Panthers, Josh Norman has played very well and shut him out. Not shut him out, but shut him down. And he's just really, I mean, nobody knows who he is, but it's time to start, and you need to start learning who this guy is. He's just really good.
4 interceptions and a forced fumble. He has returned 2 of them for touchdowns. 2 pick sixes. And again, this is just in 4 games because the Panthers had a bye week last week, and they are 4-0. Most of the rest of these teams are 5-0. All of them, correct? Is that? I think all these teams have played 5 games.
Yes,
the
the
Patriots as well. The Patriots
They're
had their
4-0,
bye
yes.
week, came back, blew the doors off the Cowboys like we expected.
Those Norman numbers are going to go down too. You know why? Because teams aren't going to throw his way. I think they're starting to learn that he is one of the elite corners in the NFL.
They would be wise to do so.
Let's talk about the Broncos, okay? I mean, we knew that their offense was going to be good going into the game. But I'm just, going into the season, what is wrong with Peyton Manning?
You know what the old saying is, Justin? Father Time is undefeated. Peyton Manning is 39 and a half, if you want to throw in those...
And a half.
And a half. His birthday's in March. Now he's probably 39 and 7 months. But, I mean, that's not terribly important. We saw the signs of decline kind of towards the end of last year. A year ago, I remember, it was, I think, about this weekend of the year, he broke that touchdown pass record and was slinging them. He had like 20 through 5 or 6 games, and it was like things were continuing over from that Super Bowl season. But right about this time last year, Peyton Manning, something just started being off. The throws wobbled a little more. The arm strength seemed to decline. He
Could have had something to do with that injury that he had in his thigh.
He had the thigh injury, but now he's healthy from that, I think.
Yeah,
but
we
still,
hope. We don't know, really.
6 touchdown passes, 7 interceptions.
That's the first time he's been in a negative touchdown-intercept ratio since his rookie season. That tells you how weird this is. The problem with the Broncos on offense is they just can't run the ball. C.J. Anderson, probably taken in the first round of your fantasy drafts, expecting him to be the stud that he was at the end of last year, and they just can't run the ball. I think Anderson has less than 2.5 yards a carry or something like that this year.
Why don't I give you his stats here just as soon as his stats? Okay, I'll have to get through that some other time.
But yeah, I know it's something like that. But they're plugging in Ronnie Hillman. You know, they're plugging in just about anybody. They're trying to find somebody that can give them a spark on offense. It's 2.6 yards per carry. Okay, so I was close.
2.6. In the game against the Oakland Raiders that they won 16-10, 11 carries, 22 yards. His long run was 10 yards. So you know what that means? The other 10 carries, he netted 12 yards.
And this has just been happening all season, and that offensive line that they've tried to makeshift has not worked. But luckily that they have the best defense in football right now. There's no doubt.
And what it feels like if you're just sort of listening to this and you hear about how the quarterback has a negative, more picks than touchdowns, and they have essentially their lead back, or the guy who was supposed to be, is averaging 2.6 yards.
I bet you can't
carry.
find another undefeated team like that in his
They're
history.
5-0. They're 5-0, and it's because of a defense that forces turnovers at an absurd rate.
They probably have 4 or 5 defensive touchdowns now, I think.
It feels like
it. Six in that game.
Well, if you think about it, the pick 6 that helped them win the game against the Ravens, there was the fumble return for a touchdown that won the Chiefs game in the last minute of the game. They had that touchdown this past week. I'm probably missing a whole bunch. And they had Derek Carr to the house with Chris Harris Jr. to help them win that game. The Broncos are doing this somehow, and it's all on the strength of the defense because the offense, passing game, and running game is pretty...
What do you think is more likely to change? The Broncos' defense to start to struggle a bit, or the Broncos' offense to turn things up a bit?
That's an excellent question. Excellent question. If I had to say, I think it's going to be that the offense will start to get a little bit better, just because I can't imagine them continuing to have rushing stats like 11 for 22. And Peyton Manning, maybe the arm isn't going to be there, but this guy also, I remember against the Chiefs, he threw 3 touchdown passes and led them on a beautiful drive to go down and try to win the game. So it's not like I think he's going to struggle mightily forever. He's still got it to some extent, and if he can set his feet and still throw, he's got some juice left. And I don't think the defense is going to struggle. I just don't foresee that. They have too many talented guys.
Yeah, DeMarcus Ware's out for 2 weeks, though, with an injury.
That's true, but he missed most of that game, and they still battered Derek Carr around with Von Miller and forced turnovers.
Shane Ray is on that football team as well, too, the highly coveted pass rusher for Missouri. So we talked about those teams. I think, we just brushed over, the Bengals. Andy Dalton has been fantastic this season, and not a lot of people give him a lot of credit either, and he deserves some credit. And the Patriots, undefeated as well, and the Packers, these are the teams that we expected to be up there. The Packers have done it in ways that we weren't really expecting, not really being able to run the ball in the last couple weeks. But the defense for the Packers has been the thing that has helped them win football games. How?
Well, they have forced turnovers. That's absolutely the key. Not a ton of turnovers in that San Francisco game, but they just kind of shut down Kaepernick, and actually Kaepernick kind of shut himself down to some extent. But in this game, you look at the stats and you say, oh, Todd Gurley managed over 150 yards rushing. Yeah, but you could also argue that he had 30 carries, and one of those carries was for 55 yards. You take that one away, it's basically about 29 carries for about 100 yards.
Problem is you can't take that away.
You can't take that away. They did give up that big play. Gurley's outstanding. He's going to be one of the top backs in the league. He probably already is, the way he's racked up 2 straight games of like 150 or so yards rushing. But they made Nick Foles look absolutely terrible. The Packers defense had 4 interceptions of Foles and forced a fumble. They gave up 10 points. And I mean, the St. Louis definitely should have scored more. They missed a couple field goals and had a turnover in the red zone that was ugly,
definitely a trap game for the Packers. I thought that there was a decent chance they could drop that one even in Lambeau. And Rodgers turned the ball over twice. I mean, if you would have told me that Rodgers turned the ball...
Rodgers turned the ball over 3 times.
With a fumble.
2 picks and a strip sack by Robert
Right,
Quinn.
so if you told me that Rodgers turned the ball over 3 times against the Rams, I would have told you that the Rams probably would have won that game. But it's just the defense that keeps showing up for Green Bay, which would be... I hope it continues for them so they can keep rolling.
Well, obviously, I hope it continues as well. I have my doubts to some extent, but at the same time, they do seem to finally be rounding into form. I will wait on it because I'm always skeptical of the Packers' defense. They have let me down in the past, a la giving up 3 touchdowns in 3 straight drives against Seattle in the NFC Championship game. But they still have Rodgers. He's not going to throw 2 interceptions and turn the ball over 3 times.
I
doubt
it
season.
I doubt it happens again.
And in which case, if they still have the defense, it's good if you can win ugly sometimes, because that shows you that you don't always have to be blowing the doors out.
Falcons did the same thing last week as well against the Redskins. So, now that we've talked about some teams that have started off really well this year, how about the teams that have not? What team has been your biggest disappointment so far this year?
The biggest disappointment to me... This might be a little bit of low-hanging fruit, and maybe it's kind of an easy one to kick someone while they're down, but the Detroit Lions, a playoff team of a year ago, they lost 5 games last year. Not included, the 5 games in the regular season, went 11-5, were right up there for the division, and probably should have won that playoff game in Dallas. Now they have 5 losses in a row to start this season. Matthew Stafford has the most interceptions of any quarterback in the league, got benched for Dan Orlovsky. Dan Orlovsky at home against the Cardinals. Now, the Cardinals are great, but they lost 42-10?
17, yeah.
Was that 42-17? Got a late garbage touchdown, I guess, that made it just look a little bit better. But this is a team that had made the playoffs last year, and yeah, they lost Ndamukong Suh, but they replaced him with Haloti Ngata. And they still have Calvin Johnson and Golden Tate and the great years that those guys had last year. Eric Ebron as the young tight end. Stafford is still there. They drafted Amir Abdullah to make the run game even better, you would think. But it's 0-5, and they look awful against the Cardinals.
Yeah, we take a look at pulling up some stats here. That their turnover ratio is -6, and through 5 games, that's rough to overcome. Third down conversions have struggled, 24 for 65. I'm not sure on that exact percentage, but that is
below half.
That is nowhere near the top of the NFL. I guarantee it. The other thing that concerns me is they're averaging 2.8 yards a play in the run game. They can't run the ball right now either. Joique Bell's kind of out of it, and Amir Abdullah. Well, he's exciting in the passing game, yes, and he's got a bright future, we hope. But he turns the ball over too. He had that fumbling problem in Nebraska, and that's something that's tough to get rid of.
So the Lions. It's weird because you look at these stats. There's not anything terribly glaring where it's like they have given up 17 touchdowns. They've scored 11. So there's not a huge discrepancy there. They obviously probably could have won that Seattle game if the right call had been made on the batted ball out of the back of the end zone. But at the same time, they got annihilated and they benched their QB. Oh, maybe that's what it is. Scoring is the name of the game in the NFL.
Right.
They're 30th in scoring.
And last in the league in rush yards with 49 per game.
So that's rough. That's obviously very, very rough.
Right. Another team that's disappointed for me is the Miami Dolphins. Because...
Well, when you fire your head coach 4 weeks into the season, yeah, that's a disappointing season. You never want to do that.
It's very disappointing.
True.
I don't understand with the team that has as much talent as they do that they're struggling this bad. They can't run the ball. The defense has played poorly. And Ndamukong Suh doesn't seem like himself, which may or may not have anything to do with his contract. I won't get into that.
Maybe.
And I thought I was positive this was the year for Ryan Tannehill. I thought this was the year that Tannehill finally comes out and shows everybody that he can be a franchise quarterback, and he has not done that.
We got 56% completion. His yards per attempt at 6.3. That's not ideal. 7 touchdown passes and 5 interceptions, and he's fumbled the ball 4 times. His QBR is 32, and you're looking for it to be at least at 50 because that's average. So we're talking below average play there. Passer rating below his career average. So he's having a career worse year, essentially, and that's what'll get your coach fired if you thought that was going to be the guy that was going to lead you to the promised land, and he doesn't.
Yeah, I have a couple Dolphins fans that I've been around, and they were pretty excited for the year too. And the one big thing that I thought that was going to hold them back was the offensive line. And we haven't watched any Dolphin games to speak to that, but I'm sure that hasn't gone well for them at all. The offensive line has probably played rather poorly. I think Brandon Albert's been in and out of the lineup. Let me just pull up some stats here for the Dolphins. And they're second to last in the league in points scored.
Like we said, scoring is the name of the game. You don't do much of that, you're not going to be real successful.
And 31st in rushing yards. I mean, these two teams we're talking about at the bottom of the league in those two important categories for me. I tell you, winning in the playoffs when it comes time to when you need to win football games, you got to stop the run and you need to run the ball. And
well, forget the playoffs. Neither of these teams are going anywhere near
but I'm
there.
just saying that right now this team has big issues in those areas. And do you think they can turn it around? Do you think the Dolphins under a new head coach can light some fire?
Dan Campbell, the new head coach?
Yeah, he seems like a character, I tell you what.
So, the talent is there. It's kind of always been there in Miami, but if Ndamukong Suh is going to go be the $100 million man who doesn't show up, here's
the money stats. You talk about how good that defensive line was going to be. They have 1 sack.
1 sack?
1 sack.
What?
That's with Cameron Wake and Olivier Vernon and Ndamukong Suh and these other guys that fill in. I mean, I don't get Earl Mitchell. That's the guy who fills in D tackle. 1 sack. That's all they got.
Come on. Okay, that you can't have 1 sack when you invested that much money and have that many guys who've been all pros in the past. That's rough for the Dolphins. Can I turn it around? Turn it around in this case, if they get to like 6 or 7 wins, the AFC East has 3 teams that are above 500 right now, and they got to play all of them, I'm sure.
That division is stacked, besides the Dolphins, sitting at 1-3. Let's see. Another team, I want to talk about the Ravens secondary, or just the Ravens defense in general. This is a team that's been praising the defensive side of the ball for a very long time. And they just got beat 33-30 by the Cleveland Browns, okay? And Josh McCown threw for 457 yards. If you would have told me that would happen before the game, I'd have thought there's no way.
This is Josh McCown, the 36-year-old journeyman quarterback who most Cleveland fans before this game and over the last couple of games were like, why aren't we playing Johnny Manziel?
Right.
He had not won one of his starts yet. The other win for Cleveland Browns had come under Manziel. And yet they allow this guy... Was it in Baltimore? Was that game in Baltimore? I'm pretty sure that game was in Baltimore.
I think it was too.
The team on the bottom, if you look at that.
It was in Baltimore.
The game's at home, and you allowed Josh McCown to throw for more yards than anyone else in the history of the Cleveland Browns franchise. That's not a new team.
No.
They had Otto Graham back in the day. I mean, maybe they haven't had a lot of great quarterbacks since then, but still, 457 yards. He raked them over the coals, and this is a team that's supposed to play good defense and has not been this bad under the John Harbaugh era, which is, 7-8 seasons now?
The Ravens are 1-4.
Never been this bad.
The Ravens are 1-4 right now.
And if the Steelers kicker, Scobie?
Right.
If Scobie hadn't choked away the game, they would be winless.
That's absolutely correct.
They would be winless.
And the offense has struggled a bit, but the offensive line was really bad the first couple games. But they've picked it back up to what they were at the end of last season. I think their offense is going to finally get it around. He just doesn't have anybody to throw to with Perriman out of the lineup right now.
And Steve Smith hurt as well?
Smith has been hurt with the ribs, I think, is what he has. But the defense, I don't know where this has come from. They got 15 sacks. It's not like, the defensive line isn't getting pressure on quarterbacks.
15 sacks, nothing to sneeze at. 3 a game. That's not bad.
Right.
Is it the secondary?
I think it's the secondary. They lost Darian Stewart, the safety, to the Broncos in the offseason. And Ladarius Webb, I thought was a quality corner and has been for a while. I'm just very confused with this Ravens team, and 1-4 is definitely no reflection of how good this team can be.
It feels like the Ravens should not be this way, and that they won't be this way. I sort of expect the Ravens to all of a sudden reel off like 6 straight wins or something, and
it's
get
very possible, yeah.
back into things and be right there. But the problem is they're looking up now at the Browns, who are 2-3 and have a tiebreaker over them, but also looking up at the 3-2 Steelers and the 5-0 Cincinnati Bengals, who have already beaten them as well. Their best case scenario at this point is probably to maybe contend for a wild card, which doesn't even seem feasible if you're going to give up that many points, yards, touchdowns. They let Gary Barnidge toast them. He tore through that team.
That was a pretty nice catch.
That was one of the great catches I think I've ever seen.
That was very impressive. So let's talk about some players now that have been big surprises individually instead of teams. I want to start off talking with Carson Palmer because, I mean, you disagree and think that Phillip Rivers is the most underrated quarterback in football, but I will counter with Carson Palmer and what he has done this season. It's been absolutely phenomenal. I mean, when Larry Fitzgerald is healthy and he's got John Brown running down the seams with the protection, which has been way better. I mean, what's his quarterback rating right now?
114.
114, 13 touchdowns, 3 picks. I mean,
he's averaging 8.9 yards per attempt. That is a career high.
I love Carson Palmer. What he, I mean, people just think that he's this average type of quarterback, but I don't think he is. I wouldn't call him elite, but I would put him up there, maybe top. He's got to be top 10 right now, the way he started the season.
Oh, absolutely. And what's weird is that 35 years old, he had the knee surgery after he ripped up his knee, and honestly, they could have rolled all the way deep into the playoffs last year, but they were decimated by injuries at the quarterback position once Palmer and then Stanton went down. They were left with Lindley, and they had no chance. But now, the thing is, 35 years old, he's having a career year, and they're doing it with Fitzgerald, who's 32, and Chris Johnson, who's 30.
Right.
This is an old guy gang that Bruce Arians is rolling with down in Arizona, but it's working, and youngsters like John Brown and Michael Floyd as well, and Fells, Daniel Fells. Which Fells am I thinking of?
No, they don't really use a tight end that much, but
I think he might have scored a touchdown. But then again, lots of people scored touchdowns against the Lions. But so they're 4-1. They had an aberration kind of loss where they couldn't stop Todd Gurley, but maybe no one will most of the rest of this season. But other than that, they could be perfect as well, and they are a real threat in the NFC.
I was just going to mention that this team may be the best team that give the Packers a run for their money right now. Just the way that they play defense. That secondary, I tell you what, that secondary is loaded with
Peterson, I should say. Patrick
Peterson. They have some players on that secondary that could start for other teams that don't start for them. I mean, the safety depth with Jefferson and Matthew and the other guys that they got back there.
Justin Bethel back there. And Patrick Peterson.
You almost got enough for 2 secondaries back there, and it's great. And you know they just signed Dwight Freeney, which I think is good. By the way, I'd like to see the old veteran have some success in Arizona.
Don't know how much he has left in the tank. Well, I guess that remains to be seen.
Right. I mean, and another guy. If you don't know who Calais Campbell is, it's time for you to learn who he is. He's been an All-Pro for numerous years in a row now, and they don't have anybody to rush off the edge right now with Okafor hurt. But Campbell's always been a legitimate, consistent threat rushing the passer.
So the Carson Palmer is doing it, and it's the resurgence of. I thought Chris Johnson would stick a fork in him. Done. I mean,
right. I think everybody
done. He was almost out of the league. They signed him in the middle of August, and all of a sudden he is having a resurgence. He had, I think, 105 yards on 10 carries. That's 10 yards a carry. Ripping up the Lions' defense, and Andre Ellington came back and rattled off a 60-yard touchdown. And David Johnson scored twice from inside the goal line carries. They have an abundance of weapons. Bruce Arians is letting those horses run loose, and the defense, like you suggested, maybe is short on the pass rushing, but their secondary is ferocious. Maybe the Cardinals are an under-the-radar kind of team, just like Palmer's an under-the-radar quarterback.
I think that if this offense keeps their offensive line continues to play like they have, that this offense is going to be really tough to stop, and I think that I feel like the Cardinals struggle with injuries on the defensive side of the ball late in the year. If their defense can stay healthy, I like the Cardinals' chance to make a deep push in the playoffs. Who has been your biggest individual surprise so far this year?
Biggest individual surprise? Oh, man, that you're putting me on the spot here.
I am putting you on the spot.
As far as... Oh, man. That's a really good question. I think I'm tremendously surprised at... I'll give you one. And this might be a little bit of a homer thing. It's a former homer, almost. Charles Woodson is 39 years old. He turned 39 this past week. He has 4 interceptions, and the one that he had against Peyton Manning, the second one, he looked like he was half his age, flying high to grab the ball and land in bounds. This man is 39 years old, like I said. Most guys in the secondary, safety, corner, they're playing him all over the place back there. They retired years ago, and this guy is rising up the list of interceptions. I think he's now tied for like 5th or 6th all time or something for the most interceptions, and he's had those last 4 in the last 3 weeks. So Woodson is maybe it's not translating into wins actually for the Raiders now at 2-3 after 2 straight losses, but Woodson has still got it. Let's put it that way.
If you even take away the last few good years Woodson's had, he's no doubt about it a Hall of Famer and one of the greatest to ever play in the secondary. But these last 3 years have just been, the last couple years have been impressive and incredible. I mean, what he's doing at his age, they're relying on him so much at the back end right now. The Raiders secondary with all the injuries they have back there with Nate Allen and company, and he's one of those players that you just can't cheer against. You know, he's a veteran. You know, he plays the game the right way, and he's been around for so long, and it's going to be sad when we have to see him retire, I think.
Actually, if you want one more surprise, I'm going to go with Andy Dalton, as a matter of fact.
You know, I definitely agree.
Andy Dalton gets so much crap from people,
and it's quite disturbing, actually. You say what you want about this. Used to be the debate with Matt Ryan that he couldn't win playoff games. Can we just accept the fact that he's a good quarterback? What Andy Dalton's doing right now, he's got one good wide receiver, and he's got a good running game and
a great running game.
Well, Jeremy Hill's been very disappointing this year.
But he's scored some touchdowns, and Bernard has actually kind of taken that role back as the lead in that tandem.
And Tyler Eifert has been one of my favorite surprises of this. Not really surprised. I expected him to play well, but
Marvin Jones, Mohamed Sanu, and yes, of course, A.J. Green. But Dalton is avoiding turnovers this year. He has 2 interceptions and 1 fumble. Last year, he turned the ball over 21 times.
That's the big difference so far. And I want to root for this kid because people they make fun of him all the time, and it's not fair. Yeah, he's lost this X amount of playoff games, but
4 years in a row, yeah, we get that. They were on the road in 3 out of those 4, and in the one that they did lose at home, that one I will give to you as a really bad one. But last year in the playoffs, they didn't have A.J. Green. So the Bengals are 5-0 now. They have a great running game. They have Geno Atkins back there causing havoc up the middle. Carlos Dunlap has a whole bunch of sacks. And maybe the Bengals are for real this year. I know it's a whole bunch away from the playoffs, and that's when we'll really decide. But Andy Dalton deserves a lot of credit for having some of the most yards and most touchdowns in the league and keeping the turnovers at bay.
All right, so if we're going to get more specific here now with Week 5, we're going to go with our most impressive wins and most important wins for the teams of the week, and then the most hurting losses for the teams that lost football games this week. I'm going to start us off with a crushing loss for the Kansas City Chiefs. Because,
yeah, of course.
They had that game in the bag for quite a long time, and then Jamal Charles got hurt, and right now I'd like to send my condolences to Charles and his family, and now he's got to go through a second ACL injury, and I think everybody would like to see him come back strong next year. But that really took the wind out of their sails. They had that. I mean, the Bears weren't doing anything in that game until late, and they stole it from them, and it's going to be a tough one for the Chiefs to swallow.
Well, because Jamal Charles is so much of that offense. We know that they had that streak for like 19 games or whatever that they didn't even throw a touchdown to a wide receiver, but they still had wins last year because Jamal Charles is their offense. In the absence of him, puts more pressure on Alex Smith, and I'm honestly not sure if he even can handle. And remember, week 1 of this season, they blew the doors off the Houston Texans on the road in Houston. They had like a 20-0 lead before you could even blink your eyes, and you were like, "Oh, maybe the Chiefs can really do some damage this year." They had an impressive offense. The defense has Justin Houston and Tamba Ali and Dontari Poe on a really nice defensive line there to rush the passer. But then all of a sudden, after 4 straight losses, and now the loss of Charles, the Chiefs are they're in a rough spot. And
1-4, sitting at 1-4 at the bottom of the AFC West, and that's going to be tough to dig out of, I think.
If you want a team that actually, an impressive win for them, or like a win that kind of boosts their spirits, it's got to be the Philadelphia Eagles to me, because they were at 1-3 and having never been able to like string together 2 good halves. They maybe would have a good first half, but couldn't finish the game all that well.
And they struggled in the first half.
Usually they'd be struggling in the first half. But then they managed to keep it close. They didn't let the Saints do a whole lot. And then all of a sudden in the second half, it went from being a close game to being a wind up margin of victory of 22 points over the New Orleans Saints at home in Philadelphia.
And it's about time DeMarco Murray finally gets going.
It's about time.
We've been waiting for Murray to get going, and I think this is finally his coming out party, we hope. And I don't believe in the Eagles yet right now.
Neither do I at this point. I
but
don't know
this
how
was
you
a
could.
big win, and we can reverse that and say a big crushing loss for the Saints. I know it was on the road, but they're now 1-4 at the bottom of the South.
Looking up at 2 undefeated teams in Carolina and Atlanta.
With a big divisional game coming up on Thursday.
It's going to be rough for the New Orleans Saints to try to beat the Atlanta Falcons. It just feels like the Saints are just a shell of what they used to be.
And their salary cap situation is the worst in football, and it's really bad. I mean, this team is probably now considering getting rid of Peyton. They're probably going to be considering getting rid of the GM, Loomis, and things like that.
Which I'm sure brings you an incredible amount of joy to see the Saints fall apart.
I can't say I'm upset about it, but the Saints are in a lot of trouble. And
they're in a bad way.
They're in a big, yes. And a team that I thought played pretty well and needed a win and got one, the Colts. I realized it was on the road against Houston, who's been struggling recently, but Matt Hasselbeck again showed, another old quarterback coming back and
40
playing
years
well.
old, 40 years old, Matt Hasselbeck.
And we got to remember these 2 performances from Hasselbeck. We probably won't see him. We may not see him for the rest of his career because Luck's expected to play this week. But he had a riveting performance, and I think this could be one of those stories that we see late in the playoffs, that the Colts are there, and we look back on something like this where Hasselbeck comes in and wins both games.
He does win both the games against Jacksonville and Houston, to be, I guess, fair. But at the same time, at 40 years old, and on a short week, especially after he was apparently in the hospital with IVs and stuff like that, and then he comes out on a Thursday Night Football, so he doesn't even practice, avoids turning the football over, throws a couple touchdown passes to Andre Johnson and Johnson's return to Houston. And, give the Colts credit. They managed to gut out 3 straight division wins. That's going to be absolutely huge in terms of division tiebreakers, with the rest of those teams in that division having, I think, 3 wins combined. So now the Colts are back on track, you might think, but they got to play the Patriots.
Right.
And the last couple of times they played the Patriots, pretty much every game in the Luck era, actually,
has been
a blowout.
A really tough game for Luck to come back from, and he's actually definitely on my list of biggest disappointments this year. Whether or not it has to do with his injury, we're not sure how much that was involved. But he didn't look... I expected Luck to be a top 2 quarterback this year. I did. Coming in, I thought it was Rodgers and then Luck, and that's where it was. But the way that Luck has played so far this year, I thought we've been waiting for him to get rid of his turnovers for a while now.
They got worse.
It's gotten worse.
He had 7 interceptions, and that was just in the 3 games that he played.
I praise Andrew Luck for what he does. I believe he's an incredibly smart quarterback, but he's got to start making better decisions. They got all the playmakers in the world. Whether or not that offensive line is good enough or not, we're going to find out. But I do think that offense will pick things up probably after this
they
week.
Play the Patriots, honestly.
Not counting the Colts out of that game, but it's going to be pretty tough.
The Patriots look like they could be the number 1 team in the NFL right now, and I think the Elliot Harrison's power rankings on NFL.com does have them as the number 1 team. Their offense looks pretty spectacular. Brady's avoiding turnovers like he always does. Julian Edelman, and the element that Deion Lewis brings. Did you see Deion Lewis's touchdown against the Cowboys where he made 5 tackles, broke 5 tackles or whatever?
See, this is what I love about the New England Patriots. Everybody's going to probably give me crap for this. I love the New England Patriots and what they do. Not so much, the bad things that they may not have done. But they take these players who have been rejected in so many places before and aren't expected to do anything and turn them into stars. There are so many. Julian Edelman, for one, he wanted to play basketball. He was told he should play basketball. Go play in the CFL or something like that. But he told him, no, you should try this. Or no, my fault. He was supposed to be a quarterback. They wanted him to switch to quarterback and play in a different league, but somebody told him to try a different position. And so he did. And guys like Deion Lewis
was out of the league a couple years ago.
Right, and they just turn these players into what they need, what they probably never thought themselves they would be in. So
here's the thing. The New England Patriots for the last 15 years have been Brady, Belichick, and interchangeable parts.
Absolutely.
That is the New England Patriots. Gronkowski is obviously essential to them at this point for all the matchup problems that he creates on defense. But you know what? In the past, Gronkowski's had injury years, and guess what? The Patriots still wind up in the AFC Championship game. It's Brady, it's Belichick, and whatever pieces Bill Belichick can plug and play. Obviously, some of them are quite talented. Gronkowski's an absolute monster, but Brady and Belichick make that team, and the wins just keep on coming. You look at Peyton Manning, we talked about how he's declining. Brady's never looked better, and they're about the same age. Brady's 38, and he has another career year. It's just like ho-hum. The Patriots are still excellent, and they're still going to rule that division, even though people thought maybe this is the year for the Dolphins or the Jets or the Bills or somebody to overtake them.
Yeah, that reminds me. Now, everybody was saying all these things, when they thought Brady was going to miss these 4 games. Is this finally the year that a team knocks down the Patriots? And, obviously we got a long way to go, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. Since we are starting here a little bit late in the NFL season at Week 5, and we kind of had a whole kind of a season recap here in the last half hour or so, we're going to close this week here by going over just the power rankings that have recently come out here on NFL.com. I believe the author was
Elliot Harrison has got this
Yes.
power ranking series every week. A little blurb about each team.
We probably won't do this every week. Next week we'll probably focus more on the games that happened that week and what it means. But we look here at the rankings that he pulled out. One is the Patriots. I think we both can agree there. And
he had the Patriots leapfrog the number 2 team, which was the Packers. So those two teams switched spots. And as what he puts it as, if you look at this, where did he have that? It's becoming more and more difficult to keep the Patriots from the top perch in these rankings here. And basically suggesting that it's not like the Packers are playing worse. And he didn't give them too much jazz about their kind of sluggish game against the Rams, at least Rodgers' sluggish game. He's just saying that the Patriots have played so well. They've scored, I think, the most points in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken, scoring like at least 30 points in every game that they've played so far this season, I believe. And the Packers are number 2. He's got the Cincinnati Bengals at number 3 and the Denver Broncos at number 4. And then your Falcons at number 5, Justin.
I'm surprised to see the Falcons at number 5. And I love the new Atlanta Falcons. I love the new mentality that Dan Quinn has brought. But I look here and I see that the Cardinals are below the Falcons, and even I know that I don't think that's right. I don't think the Falcons would beat the Cardinals anywhere. Just because the Cardinals are so hot right now. They have that one loss, and it's very possible that he put us at 5 just because we're still undefeated.
There's something to be said for that, but man, did the Cardinals, when they are rolling, Larry Fitzgerald is having a rebirth at 32, Palmer is making stars out of John Brown, and the ghost of Chris Johnson is alive and well.
And then, so personally for me, I would flip-flop those two. I still believe that the Falcons are a better football team than the Panthers right now, but we're obviously going to get to see that later in the year.
We're about to find out.
And then
he's got the Jets up at number 8, which that seems weird to me. They did have a bye week last week. You can't really argue with 3-1, and they did lose to Philadelphia in kind of a little bit of an aberration game, I thought, when Ryan Fitzpatrick started turning the ball over.
But that's another player we should probably be praised. Ryan Fitzpatrick has played pretty darn solid for the Jets.
You know who's
year.
Played even better for the Jets is Chris Ivory.
Yes, that is very true. I didn't expect much out of him this year.
300 yards rushing. Really, really impressive. And he has a team at 2-3 that is the number 9 team in the NFL in his power rankings. That's the Seahawks.
Seahawks, right. It's just so tough to put that team further down that list just because we know that they aren't playing to their potential right now.
And we know how much potential there is.
Right. Because I remember last year when people were counting the Seahawks out early, they had a rough start to the year.
Right, they did start the year 3-3.
Very possible that I think it's guaranteed. Do you think it's a lock the Seahawks make the playoffs? I think it's close to a darn near lock.
A lock? They're going to have to chase down somebody else in a wild card where right now the team is probably going to win that division unless they really start struggling or get injury problems like last year. The Cardinals, I anticipate them really continuing to roll and probably winning the division.
The Seahawks have a chance to win that division, though, I think.
They're going to have to start beating them head-to-head, and they still got to play both those games. But the other thing is, in the NFC South, you have those teams that are still both undefeated, so that's probably a wild card right there, unless there's a real choke job.
We're still really early.
So now you're looking at maybe the Seahawks can sneak into that last playoff spot unless they can overtake someone in the division.
And you know darn well if this Seahawks team sneaks into the playoffs,
no one wants to play them.
Nobody will want to play them.
With the experience and the defense. But still, the defense looked like it was rounding into form. They really shut down the Bears and Lions, which maybe isn't saying much. Then they had a game against the Bengals where it was 24-7, and I was thinking, oh, same old Bengals. Oh, the Seahawks are back.
Right.
They gave up it was 20 unanswered points, as a matter of fact, to close that game 27-24 in overtime. That is inexcusable if you are a defense that prides yourself on being the Legion of Boom and such a great defense as they've been the last couple of years. You can't give up 20 straight. And the offense, with that, what was it? Talls, the running back, Thomas Rawls.
Yeah, that's where he got the tough from, right?
Rawls, whatever. He had a lot of yards, but guess what? They did not score in the fourth quarter or overtime. They couldn't make points when it mattered.
Right. When we talk about seeing teams like the Jets here at number 8, but the reason why we're seeing teams up there, the Seahawks are 2-3. And when we look at these teams down here, the Eagles are 2-3, the Ravens are 1-4, Cowboys 2-3, Chiefs.
Well, with the injuries, it's hard to be any better than 2-3 for the Cowboys.
And the Dolphins 1-3. These are the teams that we expected to have a lot more success than they've had right now, and that's the reason why we're seeing. I tell you what, I like those New York Giants right there at number 10. I think this team is starting to turn things around on offense, and Eli Manning has looked a lot better, and he's another quarterback that gets a lot of flack that he doesn't deserve. That defense obviously is concerning for me. They don't have a lot of talent out there at all.
They made Kaepernick look a lot better than he has the last couple of weeks. And Carlos Hyde as well.
And they're up 5 spots this week, it looks like, in his rankings. I'm sure
they are, yeah.
We could make
well, but let's think about it. The Giants could easily be 5-0. Probably should be if they didn't blow 2 double-digit fourth-quarter leads or just 1? I mean, they were up in the fourth quarter in both cases against Dallas and Atlanta to start the season. They should probably be 5-0. They have weapons like Larry Donnell, who caught the great touchdown pass to win the game. And Odell Beckham is there. Victor Cruz will come back at some point. So they're Ruben Randall. So, I mean, there are weapons that Eli can work with. Don't know about the defense. It's sort of always been a question mark in New York. But the rest of that division is bleh. The Cowboys with their injury problems. The Redskins I don't believe in at all.
No.
And the Eagles, I really don't know yet. Maybe the offense will start to actually be what everybody thought it was going to be. But
Giants and Eagles will be fun to watch this year. I think so. Those two teams are going to probably be the top 2 in that division, I think.
And I believe they're playing on Monday Night Football.
Oh, are they? Well, that's perfect. I mean, if we had a preview show, we could talk about things like that. But I think I look here at 13. The Pittsburgh Steelers, I personally believe that's a little too low.
Too low?
It's too low for me because they're playing without their starting quarterback right now. And once Ben comes back, I think the Steelers are a top 7 team with Ben Roethlisberger.
Well, he's excellent. He makes the team a whole lot better. They're getting by with Vic right now, 1-1, I guess, since Vic has come in. And they did and Roethlisberger got hurt in the St. Louis game. So Vic comes in, mops up that game, which was in doubt at the time. So give Vic credit for that. He had the great scramble to pick up a third down and put them into kind of range to possibly either tie or take the lead. And they did take the lead at the buzzer with Le'Veon Bell and a touchdown off the Wildcat formation with a direct snap to Bell. Bell's obviously great. He's probably the best all-around back in the league.
He is the best running back in football, and
Adrian Peterson might have a little bit of an argument with you.
I will talk about to anybody with argument. I think Bell is the best running back in football, and I will defend that against anybody who thinks Adrian Peterson may be better. So, obviously, they're 2 different running styles.
Completely different.
Completely different players, obviously, but I think Bell is more effective in what he does.
Bell is absolutely outstanding. The patience I saw him display yesterday on that run to win the game.
The power, he was stopped. He was stopped.
He was stopped
and found a way to get in still.
When I saw the play, the handoff, not a handoff, I should say, the direct snap, it looked like he got stuffed, and I was like, oh, Chargers going to win. Oh, never mind. The Steelers won because it was Bell's individual effort to get the get that second effort, get it just across the goal line. Gutsy call from Mike Tomlin, and they wind up winning the game over the San Diego Chargers, who have to be kind of crushed with their loss, considering that they really played pretty well in the return of Antonio Gates. And, you'd like to think you can manage to win that game at home on Monday Night Football, but Bell's individual effort, and boys, are good to have him back. And once they get Roethlisberger back, I agree with you. That could be a team that can make noise in the AFC.
I find this really just kind of comedic that the Buccaneers and the Jaguars are ahead of the Dolphins. I still just can't get over how poorly this Dolphins team is. I just can't. And
haven't we talked about the Dolphins enough, Justin?
I know, it's just something that's gotten on my mind that I want to talk about. But the Buccaneers, hey, that was a big win for them. Well,
they scored 38 points, which is kind of like, whoa, where did that come from?
Right.
But what it came from is
this was Doug Martin.
It was Doug Martin and Jameis Winston. Even in the game that they won against the Saints, he turned the ball over. That just didn't wind up hurting them on the road. This was actually the first home game the Buccaneers won since 2013. They didn't win a single home game last year in their 214 campaign. But he avoided turnovers for the first time in his career, didn't throw a pick or fumble the ball away. And when you can avoid turnovers and have Doug Martin run for 150 yards and a couple touchdowns, that's huge. That was, I think, the highest scoring game of the week, Jacksonville versus Tampa Bay, 38-31. But yes, Buccaneers have 2 wins on the schedule now, and they have a running game all of a sudden again.
Right, and the resurgence of Doug Martin has been surprising to me. I thought that, he was just about done. That offensive line is not very good either, so I think it's similar with the Falcons, that they're finding a scheme that is working for them right now. And obviously the Jaguars are missing Paul Posluszny in that game. But
let's give credit to Blake Bortles if we're going to talk about the Jaguars. 4 touchdown passes to 1 interception in the game against Tampa Bay. Yes, it didn't really matter, but he has 10 touchdowns and 4 picks on the season.
Bortles has played
That's not
very
bad.
well. And I just don't think the Jaguars are a 1-4 team. I know that we need to get rid of this stereotype, I think, that the Jaguars are that terrible, because I think they're starting to turn things around. They just need a lot of talent.
It just hasn't shown in the win column yet. So it's kind of one of those if a tree falls in the forest thing. But yes, look out for the Jaguars they just couldn't seem to close that game or the game before against the Colts, which was totally winnable. Yeah, they got their doors blown off by the Patriots, but a lot of teams
is turning into a star.
Allen Robinson, Allen Hurns, Julius Thomas, T.J. Yeldon in the running game.
The secondary has always been terrible, and that's just got to change.
And they couldn't stop the run against Tampa Bay and Doug Martin.
Are you surprised that the 49ers are here at number 29 at 1-4? Because I'm not.
Well, remember when they won that game against the Vikings? Because that feels like ages ago, and it feels like 4 losses ago, and it feels like Colin Kaepernick regressing ago.
Right.
But they did wind up, they got that 1 win, and since then it's just kind of been like better teams have made Kaepernick look skittish in the pocket and make some really bad throws, turn the ball over. But they did almost beat the Giants. They had the lead with, 30 seconds left when Manning led them on a great drive down there, but they almost won that road game.
All the way down there on that drive, too.
And Carlos Hyde had his best game since that Vikings game after 3 relatively quiet games. I just feel like with the talent that the 49ers have lost, when they bled away all of those really great players to retirement or free agency or whatever, I still am angry about the Jim Harbaugh firing. Maybe I'm a little bit happy that the 49ers are all of a sudden relatively irrelevant.
I think the 49ers' fate was sealed before the season started, whether their fans wanted to admit it or not. Because, like you said, with a new head coach and getting rid of Harbaugh and all the talent that they've lost, it just doesn't surprise me to see them 1-4 right now.
And if there's one more team that I wanted to get in to discuss here, and that is the team that he has second to worst in the NFL. That is the Houston Texans, who went 9-7 last year. They had Ryan Fitzpatrick. They let him go. They didn't
Probably
need to.
regretting that right now.
He's playing solid football for the Jets, but they are stuck with a rotating duo of shame, we'll just call it, between Brian Hoyer, who wasn't actually terrible until one really boneheaded decision kind of threw away the game, or Ryan Mallett, who got kind of benched but maybe injured or something. It's a mess, is what it is. It's an absolute mess. Their defense isn't apparently what it used to be all of a sudden, even with Watt and Clowney and Wilfork on the defensive line.
Yeah, I just don't think that defense is playing inspired football right now. Just
not at all.
I'm not saying that they're negative before the games start, but that offense is just that bad right now, even though DeAndre Hopkins has been phenomenal.
DeAndre Hopkins has the most receiving yards in the NFL with the rotating duo of shame, I'm going to call it.
This Texans result so far starts with Bill O'Brien. He's not one of my favorite coaches in football, and personally I think he'll be out of the league or out of this job relatively soon. I'm not a fan of his demeanor. Seeing him on the sidelines, he's screaming, "You can't do that," really loud, after Hoyer's interception, and there was another play in the game. He just doesn't seem professional to me, and I feel like he's probably already lost the locker room, if you ask me. So I think the Texans obviously need a quarterback, but I think a new coach already is necessary for them.
I'm not sure if I'm willing to go that far, but he did make a criminal. I don't mean criminal in the sense that it was illegal or anything, but just an absolutely enormous blunder at the quarterback position. I'm not sure if that's O'Brien so much as it maybe is the general manager to some extent as well, whose name escapes me at this point. But they obviously way miscalculated what they had at the quarterback position because Hoyer and Mallett have been absolutely uninspiring, too many turnovers, too many boneheaded decisions, and it's hindering them, even though somehow DeAndre Hopkins has still managed all of those yards.
And can we just touch on the fact that the Houston Texans drafted a quarterback 2 years ago?
In the 4th round. Not exactly that's not late. That's mid-round right there.
Remembers this, but Tom Savage, that was a draft when Bridgewater was taken. I don't understand why they passed on him. Well, in the second round. Well, they couldn't. They could have traded up for him, is what I'm trying to say. But neglecting the quarterback position in that draft, it was a sin. It was just wrong. And the fact that they felt that they could place hope in Tom Savage, I disagree.
Well, at the time they had Fitzpatrick, I guess you could say, and Mallett, and then wind up drafting Savage as well. But maybe it's time to turn to him at some point because I'm willing to bet that they will not like what they see from Hoyer, who apparently is going to be starting in Week 6. And
who knows? Like I said, O'Brien can't make up his mind, and I disagree.
Well,
with that as
it's the lesser of two evils, and I'm not even sure which one that is at this point. They are in a bad way at the quarterback position, probably the worst QB situation in the league, arguably, because they don't have either guy that they can actually rely on going forward.
We look at these teams down here. From 28 to 32, there are 4 decent quarterbacks on these teams. When you talk about the Dolphins at 28 with Tannehill, Kaepernick at 28 with the Niners, Drew Brees and the Saints at 30, and Matthew Stafford at 32. We used to consider that these bad teams played poorly because they had bad quarterbacks, and I'm saying that the quarterbacks on these teams are pretty good, but they've just had bad seasons.
They're at the very least highly paid quarterbacks. I can tell you that much between
right.
The extensions that have been handed out to Tannehill and Stafford and Brees, and I believe Kaepernick as well. Didn't Cap get some money?
Oh yeah, he definitely got paid.
So it's not like, and those guys have they've led their teams to the playoffs in some cases, or they were in the playoffs last year. In the case of the Lions, they've been to the Super Bowl in the case of Kaepernick or Breeze, but maybe it's the town around them is hemorrhaged away to some extent, like I think definitely in San Francisco and probably also in New Orleans. But you're absolutely right. There are some high-profile quarterbacks whose teams have been absolutely miserable, or those quarterbacks even gotten benched in the case of Matthew Stafford, who apparently is still the starter going forward in Detroit.
And most of those quarterbacks have played poorly, except for Brees. Really, he was hurt and missed a few games.
Missed a game.
But he's played decent.
Well, the stats will tell you that, but I think if you watch the game, something just seems missing from Brees. I think we may be starting to see a little bit of that decline where it's like maybe the arm strength was never incredible, but he was obviously pinpoint, precise, accurate. He piles up a lot of yards, but he always has done that. The yards just don't seem to mean as much anymore because they didn't score a lot of points. They had 17 points, but a whole bunch of yards. And it just didn't translate into points, and Breeze just doesn't seem to have just quite as much as he used to. I understand he's a little bit older too, 36, I believe, going on 37, but It's not like the stats are bad. It's just that they haven't translated to points, and he hasn't managed to make plays to win games.
Yeah. Week 5 was pretty interesting, I thought. Overall, with some teams starting to separate themselves, and more importantly, these teams that have seemed to just been on the decline these first 5 weeks have been very disappointing. But we're looking forward to week 6 here. At Students of the Game. We thank you guys for joining us today. Next week, we'll try and release this maybe Tuesday morning or Monday night, but we thank you for joining us, and this will be us signing off as Justin Dade
And Elijah Freeman.
and we'll catch you guys next week. Thank you very much for tuning in.